All right, let's talk a little bit more about how this message gets from the neuron to that muscle, right? We know that neuron carries the message telling telling the muscle how to contract, but really how does that message get from the neuron to the muscle? Remember, that message is called the action potential. It's an electrical message that carries the message from the neuron to that muscle fiber. So in this picture shown in yellow, we have a motor neuron. And we call it a motor neuron because it starts in the brain and spinal cord, and it's carrying a message down to the body, telling it to do something. That's where the term motor comes from. And the other type of neuron is called a sensory neuron, and that type of neuron carries information collected in the body up to the brain. So this motor neuron starts in the central nervous system, is carrying that message to the muscle. It meets up with the muscle at what we call the neuromuscular junction. Okay, so let's break that term down. Neuro means nerve, muscular means muscle, and junction is just where two things come together. Okay, so where that neuron meets up with the muscle is called the neuromuscular junction. And in this picture, you can see it's happening right here. So the message, that action potential, comes down the axon and it reaches the very end of the axon here, and then it meets up with the purple muscle fiber. If we look to the image at the right, this is a more zoomed in view, and you can see that here the axon and the muscle fiber are coming very close to one another, but interestingly, they never ever touch. There's always an open space between the neuron and the muscle fiber called a synaptic cleft. So now, not only do we have to get the message from the neuron to the muscle, but they don't even touch. So how does that message jump across that open space? So anywhere a neuron meets up with another structure, we call that a synapse. Just turning my pen on here. A synapse. So in this situation, we're looking at a chemical synapse. There can also be electrical synapses. Those are very uncommon. So we in this course are only going to look at what happens in a chemical synapse. So in this picture, the structure that I'm outlining in red is the neuron. It's the end of that axon. Remember, the action potential travels down. I'm going to outline in green this other structure, and in this picture it's labeled as the neuron, but we're actually going to say, nope, this is the muscle. I want you to see how that message gets from the neuron to the muscle because they can't touch. There's this open space here called the synaptic cleft. So action potential travels down that neuron, and as it travels down to the end, it runs into these little storage bubbles here. I'm circling in blue. And inside those storage bubbles are called neurotransmitters. As that action potential runs into the storage bubbles, neurotransmitter is released into the synapse. Okay? And as it's released into the synapse, it then binds to these receptors on the muscle plasma membrane, or the sarcolemma. Now, the neurotransmitter never actually goes into the muscle fiber. It just binds to that receptor, and it's kind of like telling the muscle, hey muscle, it's time to contract. Okay? So these neurotransmitters carry the message across that synaptic cleft. Now stick with me. I'm going to try to compare this to a situation. And it's a little bit of a stretch, but I think it's a fair comparison. So imagine if I needed to get a message to all of you, right? Blackboard isn't working, or email isn't working, and I need to give you some instructions on how you can, complete your next task for this course. So I'm going to write you all a letter. Okay, so I write these letters, I stuff them in an envelope, and I grab all of these letters that I've written to each of you, my students, and I carry them to the post office. So guess what? In that example, I'm going to find a color I haven't used yet here. In that example, I am the storage vesicle carrying all of these letters, and the letters are kind of like the neurotransmitters. All right, they're just there to carry a message. Neurotransmitter carries messages. This letter is carrying a message. So I go to the post office and I drop all of these letters in the mailbox. Okay, my job with the letters is done. Now I need to trust that the mail is going to find its way to your mailbox. Well, sure enough, these letters find the way to your mailbox. They land in your mailbox here, right? Those letters, all they need to do is carry that message telling you what to do. So that's how those neurotransmitters work. It's a really important, neurotransmitters are really important in the body. They are used extensively in the nervous system to carry messages, but also in your discussion post assignments this week, I bet you saw many mental health disorders are caused by imbalances of these neurotransmitters. So pretty fascinating stuff. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions.